even though I'm doing the talking today, I wish to acknowledge my colleagues here at the Center for Language and Technology at UH Manoa, Russ Suvorov, Huiya Zhuang, Julio Rodriguez, and myself are all working on these project-based language learning experiences that I'm going to be talking to you about. Now, we've just gone through a project-based language learning experience, and I'm going to let you know what's up ahead. Before I begin, I would like to situate myself institutionally so that you know who is providing support for this effort. Here we see a page grab from nflrc.org, which is not to be confused with nflrc.hawaii.edu. nflrc.org is the webpage for all of the Title VI funded language resource centers in the United States. Historically, there have been 21 total centers. Right now, there are 16 funded centers, of which the NFLRC that you see in the lower left corner here is one. We are also the earliest and the longest funded single center among this family. Feel free to browse the nflrc.org website to find out all the resources that the various centers have to offer. There is a sophisticated search mechanism at that site. All right, in this presentation, I'm going to outline the framework and the time frame of our NFLRC project-based language learning professional development experiences so that I can situate us. And I'm going to recap the symposium topics that you've heard over the past few days briefly. And then I'm going to talk about what's next for you, the Online Institute. All right, so the reason that we started with this whole thing was that we saw the need for a framework to apply project-based learning, which has been a topic in many fields across education, to language education, because it's one of the less developed disciplines in terms of project-based learning. So in other words, we wanted to move from PBL, project-based learning, to something more specific, project-based language learning, and create a model. So we needed tools and models to support implementation of this idea, and we needed to establish a baseline of PBLL practice through professional development. In the chat, I've noticed questions about, can I see an example? Are there books published about this? And so forth. And we've sort of hedged our answers because this field is so young that there isn't that much of an established literature yet. So you are part of the vanguard. You are the ones who are going to be making those examples and contributing to our archive of exemplary materials. To make PBL into PBLL, we're combining two domains. The left-hand lens that you see is published by the Buck Institute for Education and shows the essential project design elements for gold standard project-based learning. At the center of the lens are those key knowledge, understanding, and success skills in a given discipline or in a group of disciplines. So that's sort of the knowledge that you're focusing on. And the diaphragm of the lens, that is the red triangles that go around it, each panel shows a different aspect of the way that we structure a PBL experience in order to target that key knowledge, understanding, and success skills. If you look at those red panels, you'll notice that those categories match exactly the criteria that Yao just went through. Of course, we added 4, right? But these 7 here and the middle one are all included in that rubric that Yao just outlined. And we're trying to merge this model from the Buck Institute for Education. Actually, they're not the only ones, but they are the primary exponents of PBL in the education field. We're trying to marry that with things that come out of our own discipline of world language education, such as the national standards, the 21st century skills map, performance assessment, task-based instruction, content-based instruction, and intercultural collaboration models, all of these horizontal bars coming out of our tradition of world language education. So we're trying to combine these two into a new structure, a new model. And as Liliana mentioned on the first day, it's not that we're doing anything new. It's not that our toolbox is radically changing, but rather that we are framing the language learning experience in a new way. All right, so for us to provide these professional development experiences to you, our basic idea is that in the early part of the year, we have an online institute, and the online institute confers a badge if you successfully complete the performance criteria that we establish in the institute. And once you have a badge, then you are eligible to apply for the Summer Institute, which is on site here in Hawaii. We already accomplished this last year, and you have heard of people refer to last year's experience, but that's just 1 year out of 4 total years in which we will be doing the same kind of cycle. This year, 2016, we're moving beyond the generic notion of project-based language learning and starting to focus on specific aspects of it. This year's theme is interculturality. Not only are we getting a little bit more specific with the theme, but we also are adding an event, namely the Symposium that we're just bringing to a close right now, as a way of sort of providing an introduction to people to see if they want to get further involved, want to go for the badging in the online institute, which is coming up, and therefore be eligible to apply to come to the Summer Institute and play that active role that you saw Nicole and Adam playing, designing specific projects, carrying them out, and then contributing them as part of our body of knowledge. And you'll see that in 2017 and 2018, we're going to have further different themes coming up. All right. So I'm going to take you forward towards the online institute. But before I do, I'd like to turn back our head and look at the themes that we have covered over these past 4 days. In session 1, Liliana and Lauren talked about how project-based language learning is different from just doing projects. In one aspect of that is that the learners know from the very beginning that they are going to be working towards this end product, which is public. It's beyond the walls of the classroom to the real world, and so they have a sense of the importance, and they are also motivated by that driving question. Also, another aspect that Liliana stressed was that during the project, you don't just work and work and work and work and then assess the final project. You want to have benchmarks, several benchmarks along the way that are sort of mini cumulative experiences where everyone can pause and assess what they've done so far and determine whether they're ready to proceed. That way, you don't arrive at the end with someone having been fallen through the cracks. And also, Liliana cited what the hallmarks are of gold standard project-based learning. All right, in session 2, Charisse talked about scaffolding in project-based language learning as an analog to the cinematic experience. So not only cinema as it is produced, but cinema as it is consumed, as we experience it. So that is, she talked about how movie makers and social rituals of film watching and spaces for viewing film scaffold our understanding of the film, and how we can use this as a metaphor for scaffolding in project-based language learning. Not only do you want to scaffold students' use of the target language by providing them the structures that they need at the right time, but you need to scaffold their content knowledge. You need to scaffold their knowledge of the culture, not only the target culture, but how the target culture sees them, sees their own culture. And you also need to scaffold the processes and procedures that the learners are going through in the project itself. So you need to provide the steps that will help them, or maybe you need to consult with them to see what they think the steps need to be to get you through towards that final project. In the third session, Liliana and Lauren were back talking about authenticity, creating authentic products, doing authentic work. They showed us the project square, which they developed last summer during our Summer Institute, that features 4 elements: the driving problem, question, or challenge, the purpose, the product, and the audience, and how you check these elements against one another to make sure that they are all meeting the criterion of authenticity, that it's really going to help a community that is involved with this target language and culture. The square is used to refine and realign your project plan to maximize authenticity. Janice's session showed us global PBLL, building linguistic, global, and cultural competencies. She gave us a portrait of an advanced Hindi-Urdu program in New Jersey that works with in-country counterparts and a local expatriate community of Hindi and Urdu speakers in the greater New York area. And she showed us how she performed assessment via multiple means, including standardized testing, that showed growth in a range of competencies among her participants. In session 5, Nicole shared her project design, Girl Power, engaging students in world issues through project-based language learning. Some of the key points from Nicole's presentation were how she planned, together with the students, to put the many working parts of this international exchange in motion, and worked together with the students to develop rubrics for assessment. So I think that her presentation was really successful in showing how the teacher is not the only actor here, that PBLL is a collaborative enterprise between the teacher and the learners. Her project showed real-world impact in both the home and the target environments, and she also stressed the importance of flexibility and being able to change plans because you have to plan for the unexpected in PBLL. Session 6, Adam from San Francisco showed us an example of a project that he's developed for an advanced distance learning course for Chinese American international school grads who, emerging from 8th grade with advanced Chinese capability, find themselves sometimes at schools that aren't able to serve their learning needs. So this online course, he outlined this Chinese American Life project, which is reflective of the immigrant experience of Chinese Americans. And he talked about the multiple avenues of preparation to help students contextualize the data they were going to get from informants. So rather than just dropping the students into the field and having them ask a set of questions to immigrant informants, he first designed cultural lessons that would help them understand the immigrant experience. I also noticed in his project that he made provision so that students at different levels of proficiency were all able to perform this interview. There wasn't a requirement that each interview be exactly the same or be performed at the same level of proficiency. Instead, you want each student to participate at the level that they can handle, and that's going to be their zone of proximal development. Today, we heard from Yao about defining and assessing quality in project-based language learning project design. She talked about the adaptation of the Buck Institute for Education's project design rubric for specific use in project-based language learning, and how the items in the rubric are used to assess one's own project design. And now we're in session 8, which I didn't summarize for you because here we are. All right, so we're situated right at the end of this left-hand icon, the PBLL 2016 Online Symposium, and we're headed for the 2016 Online Institute. And for those who complete that Online Institute and are interested and complete the requirements successfully, we have a 2016 Intensive Summer Institute that you'll be eligible to apply for. I'd like to tell you about the structure of the Online Institute so that you can decide whether you're interested in applying. Maybe many of you already have applied. So here's a little preview. This is the outline from last year. We see the topics. The first topic from PBL to PBLL is a sort of generic recap of the PBLL as a discipline and the parts thereof. And then the second element, the second unit, is beginning your own project planning. The third was language, content, and technology. The fourth was designing rich learning experiences. The fifth was designing tasks and assessment. Now this year we are modifying this menu in accordance with our focus this year on interculturality. So that the third one is going to be interculturality and PBLL, and the fourth one is going to be language, content, and technology. For those of you who were asking about specific examples of scaffolding today, you will find them in the Online Institute in Unit 4. Charisse will be back, and she will provide us with plenty of specific examples of scaffolding. Right, so the dates when these are going to be offered are the following. Unit 1, January 27th, and then every week for 5 sessions in total. Now, each one of the lessons, except for the introduction, will occupy about 30 minutes of time in a webinar if you're taking the live version of the Online Institute. So the schedule is actually kind of similar to this symposium. We've been going every day starting at the noon hour Hawaii time for an hour and a half, and the same will be true for each of these sessions. It'll be at that same time. All right, so what we're doing in the Online Institute is not only are you participating in the webinar or viewing the recordings of the webinar, but you are beginning work on a project blueprint of your own. Now, this project blueprint is a requirement for participants who want to receive their badge and want to be able to apply for the Summer Institute. The whole idea is to get you started thinking concretely about a project that you can do and how to plan it. Now, as you'll see, when we give you this project blueprint for you to make your own copy to work on, we've tried to cross-index each question with one of the lessons from the Online Institute so that you'll know which lesson to go to get the input that will help you process, help you answer this question to the best of your ability. Now, we're not expecting perfection, a full-blown project to emerge at this stage. We expect for your project blueprint to come into focus gradually, for you to answer the questions to the best of your ability with the knowledge that you have at that stage. And we think the project blueprint is quite supportive of, beginners' efforts. So we look forward to seeing your plans. All right, the structure of the Online Institute, as you saw, we have those 5 modules that are can be a live webinar in 5 separate weeks, and each module basically has 3 lessons. So the total is 15, although there is also an introduction. The topics, the content areas, I've just outlined for you briefly, but you can see those at the NFLRC website. I'm going to click through to nflrc.hawaii.edu, and that's basically all you need, nflrc.hawaii.edu, because on the main page where you see this jigsaw puzzle icon, that is the Online Institute. If you click through there, it'll take you to this page, 2016 Fundamentals of Project-Based Language Learning Online Institute, and this page does outline all of the topics. This page also explains that there are 2 options for participating in the Online Institute. If it were up to me to recommend, I would recommend that you take part in the facilitated option. That's option 1. Basically what that means is that you commit to attend these sessions at the scheduled time, just like we're doing now, participating in this webinar. Option 2 is self-paced, and what that means is that staggered, following up afterwards, after the webinar, you will be viewing recordings of the webinar and then working through the material at your own pace. So all the details are there regarding registration deadlines and so forth. Syed has just asked whether the recordings of this webinar will be available later. The answer is yes, but it does take us a while to process the video and get it up online. As Jim mentioned, he will be sending out an email to all of you who are registered participants to inform you how to access these resources. Further down the page that I'm viewing right now, you can view more detail on the module content and more information about how you participate if you choose option 1 versus option 2. Okay, I'm going to go back to my slides here. So again, it consists of 5 90-minute webinars, 30 minutes per lesson, and a staggered timetable for the two options. I should have said options, not versions, self-paced and facilitated. For each lesson, we're sort of taking a page from TED-Ed, which is an online information source that allows people to take informational videos, say lectures or learning module videos from YouTube, and publish them to a site where they post the video and then they invite people to use the video as a lesson with self-testing, with further readings, more detail, and a discussion, and then finally an application of the knowledge. So we're sort of using this same flow in our lesson structure in the Online Institute, but we haven't been using TED-Ed, the site itself. We have our own site that you will visit us at. Our own site, when you enter a lesson, it looks sort of like this. There are these different stages that you just click through and participate in. So if you want to participate and want to get your badge, not only do you need to work on that project blueprint that I mentioned that will help you start planning your first project, but you also need to get involved in the discussion. We'd like to see you participate in the discussion in each lesson. And the discussion is simply using text online in a forum. All right, so when you participate, basically you view the topics on our dedicated website, you participate in the webinar, or you view the webinar archive, and then you read in more detail a few pages of information called More to Consider. Then you participate in a reflective discussion with your co-participants, and you work on your own project blueprint for the application of project-based language learning in your own classroom. Then, when your project blueprint is coming into shape, you will be seeking out your peers in the Online Institute to ask them to review and give you some feedback on your blueprint, maybe some suggestions on how you could refine it. And then after you've received that peer review and feedback, you will be submitting your project blueprint to us for badging. Now, badging simply means that we are reviewing your work and seeing that you have fulfilled our criteria for the Online Institute. This digital badge system that we have essentially is, a badge is like a graphic emblem that is linked to a set of criteria and a set of evidence of fulfillment of those criteria. All right. Sorry, this material is from a different presentation. I'm going to skip over it. Our digital badge system certifies basic familiarity with theoretical and practical aspects of designing projects for the context of world language teaching and learning. So our criteria for awarding badges are these. You learned about fundamental aspects of project-based language learning and some of the commonalities and differences between project-based learning and project-based language learning. You developed a world language project for a specific context and described it in a project blueprint document. You designed sample standards-based tasks that target specific areas of language learning and 21st century skills. You described an articulated sequence of project tasks and corresponding assessment. And you participated in a collegial discussion on topics related to language learning project planning, design, and implementation, either by posting responses to prompts related to project-based language learning in the majority of the Get Involved sections, or by soliciting and receiving feedback from colleagues on their project blueprint based on an adaptation of the Critical Friends Protocol. So any participant who fulfills these conditions will receive a badge. So we're just finishing up this first part, Inspiring Teachers Transforming Learning, this webinar. What's coming up is this Fundamentals of PBLL Online Institute, these 5 weekly webinars. We will charge a fee of $25. You can participate from January 27th through February 24th weekly, or sorry, those dates might be, oh, that's for option 1. Those are if you're participating live. The focus is on interculturality. Then, having received your badge, should you choose to apply to attend the Intensive Summer Institute, we'll give you more details on that later. That will be from June 27th through July 1st of 2016 here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Admission is competitive with those prerequisites that I mentioned, the badge, and we provide a partial stipend for travel. That brings my presentation to a close, and I see that some questions are being dealt with in the chat, but I stand by also ready to answer any questions. I'd like to close with this slide that Julio composed, a quote from John Dewey. If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. And we have to place this in the context of John Dewey's emphasis on the practical application of knowledge and reflection. Reflection is what helps us learn. All right, I'm going to open the chat so that I can sort of see what all this furious typing has been about, because I've been concentrating on talking. A question from Diana, has the PBLL Online Institute ever rejected a project blueprint? Well, we have examples of people who started work on their project blueprint and just sort of dropped it in the middle. So we wouldn't accept one that was half finished, but as long as the participant makes an honest effort, and we definitely do not expect perfection. So it's not a matter of you achieving a high bar. It's more a matter of you beginning your journey with an honest effort. Julio says he did not take that picture. Right, and Cherise says, we don't reject your project blueprint, rather offer feedback to help you improve it. Russ says, on the other hand, not everyone who completes a project blueprint receives a badge. Yes, the project blueprint is not the only requirement. You have to fulfill those other requirements that I mentioned as well. However, it's not impossible. Plenty of people did it. So if they did it, you can do it. It's not a terrifically high bar. Are you required to complete all sessions? Yes, you are. However, if you're enrolled in the live format, the facilitated cohort attending the live webinars, and you have to miss a day, it is possible for you to complete that lesson material by watching the recorded footage and completing the tasks independently. Yoshie has asked, is there a limit or a decided time frame on the self-paced version, or can we do it any time? The answer to that is, if you want to actually participate in the self-paced version, there is a deadline for you to complete the work, because the idea of the Online Institute is for us to develop candidates for the Summer Institute. So we need to have you finish the material, the project blueprint, and participate in the discussions by a certain time so that we can evaluate your work, and you will still have time to apply for the Summer Institute. So what that means is that if you are doing the self-paced option, then you need to finish all your work by the 31st of March. So we have time to evaluate and badge you, and then you have time to apply for the Summer Institute. I'd like to address the question of ESL educators who are interested in participating in the Summer Institute. Our situation is that we are funded by a Title VI as a language resource center, and what that means is languages other than English, languages that are foreign to the U.S. So for this reason, we cannot provide support for ESL projects, or even for some languages that are not English but are within the U.S. For example, Hawaiian. Hawaiian is not considered a foreign language, and so we don't provide support for Hawaiian projects. However, if we have an exceptional candidate who wants to work with English, we might be able to work out an arrangement whereby you attend the Summer Institute on a totally self-funded basis, but we can't provide any support for you. So that's something that we can talk about. Okay, it sounds like we've addressed the questions that people were curious about. If you have further questions, we welcome you to contact us. And Jim, is there going to be a poll for this session 8 as well? I think Jim is going to be ready to open the poll. We will invite you to complete the poll, and we will keep the session open and keep the chat open for those who still have questions. But for the rest of you, we thank you very much for your patient attention, and we look forward to seeing you as participants in our online institute. Thank you very much. Aloha.